Hello and welcome to Female Voices Life and Loss. This is Teresa today, and I am honored to welcome Anna Mueller, a realtor, a wife, a soon to be author, super exciting, whose story is one of resilience, identity, and searching for hope after decades of a long battle with infertility. This journey is not only about loss, but about love and what was she held steady with through all of the silence, a faith that was tested and reimagined, and a woman who chose to rewrite what happiness looks like. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I am so thrilled to be here and
Yeah.
honored that you have me on your podcast. Thank you, Teresa.
And we don't normally do this in person.
No.
Recorded once before,
Yeah.
and audio was a problem. So here we are together today to talk instead of doing this virtually via Zoom. So we're excited to be together.
Yes.
So why don't you share real quick a little bit about you? I shared a realtor, a wife, all of that. What else? What else should we know about you?
So I have been married to my incredible husband, Jeremy, for 19 years. We met 23 years ago at a stoplight on Lindbergh over in St. Louis, Missouri. And it was just one of those fates that just kind of brought two souls together. I couldn't have done this journey with anybody else. He's just been an incredible inspiration in my life. I have been in the corporate world my entire career, and I took a leap and went real estate full time. And it's been a crazy and awesome ride ever since. So it's been a lot of fun, and opening my voice and sharing what our story is has really inspired me to move forward and continue on the book tour of things, and hopefully finalizing that here in the next couple months and have another big announcement to share.
I'm super excited to be just going on that journey with you of writing your book. So that's super exciting. So share with us, I had mentioned before, like it's been a long battle with infertility and all of that. Share with us, was that entire journey? Walk us through some of that.
So our journey was a total of 10 years. In that 10 years, I've had 3 surgeries. I did 6 months of Lupron shots, 11 IUIs. We have spent time with the IVF specialist, also talked to multiple of adoption agencies, and our journey ended as aunts and uncles.
Yeah, such a long journey that many people don't even have any idea what infertility, what that journey looks like. I personally kind of experienced that through my daughters. So before we could play, we chatted a little bit about that. So why? Because many people say, why didn't you do IVF? Why didn't you adopt? Why didn't you blah, whatever that is? So talk to that, because we have talked about this before.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a question that I get asked a lot, including our friends, which is fantastic because they want to know and they want to learn with us. IU was the thing to do back in that day. It was the most natural that the specialist and my doctors would say. IVF was a lot of emotional and medical, and already going through the Lupron and the surgeries. When we sat down with the IVF specialist and did my husband's sample for his testing, and we did multiple vials of blood in my samples, we were told on our 3-way call with the specialist, the doctor, that my husband was fine, which is always a blessing. Unfortunately, it was still me. I have endometriosis, fibroids, a tilted uterus, and then I was told I'm a carrier for cystic fibrosis, which was why the IUIs weren't working, which is why my numbers were so elevated, but nothing was happening. And we found out through that conversation and through testing that I was actually having very early miscarriages. We just thought they were blood clots from the fibroids. We didn't know. It's a conversation that we had. It was not a clinical test to say, yeah, absolutely, this is what it was, but they're pretty high level certain that's what it was. And so our specialist told us during that time, our chances for conceiving with IVF just went down to 20, 30%. because it wouldn't be normal, the embryos and things like that, if I could even get them to that term. And so we had to take a step back, and then we looked into the adoption journey, which is a very difficult, emotional.
Yes.
It doesn't always have a happy ending.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I just saw a post on social media that someone was asking for prayers because this is somebody actually from my church was asking our prayer group at church to pray for a friend of hers who went to the hospital to adopt a child. And the prayer request was to please pray for them because they did not come home with a child. So people don't understand really
That just
that's
breaks my
there.
heart for that.
Me too. I had to kind of pause there because I'm like getting emotional because people don't
Absolutely.
understand that there is no guarantee. And I've know friends and I've had people on the podcast that they have flown across states to adopt a child to come home without. And so when people say just adopt, no, that's not the answer. That's not the answer because that doesn't always work. Just like IVF doesn't always work. There's so much of it that's just it does not work for everyone. And so I want society and those listening to try not to say those things to people.
Yes.
Because there's no guarantee with anything with a child. So I know we talk more about that, and I want you to talk a little bit more about that with the adoption. You chose that was not the path to go, and I just shared why. But I know you've talked more about that with me previously.
Yes.
More about that.
Absolutely. So a funny tidbit about my husband and I is he is German Catholic and I am Jewish. And so when we started this journey, there was a lot of conversation of how are we going to raise our kids? What is that going to look like? And when I was going through the infertility journey and constantly having a negative pregnancy test and constantly being not pregnant and having the waves of emotion and the feelings, I had moments where I thought, if we were the same religion, would that make a difference? My husband in a small town would just marry a good Catholic girl. Would that make a difference? Would that make God happy? I didn't know what was going on. Those were things going on in my head.
Sure.
I share a lot of that in the book that I'm writing too. But when we started talking about adoption, my husband was open immediately. He wanted to have a soccer team of kids. It did not matter how, where, why, when, just make it happen. And for me, I was stuck on wanting to be the person to have the child. I wanted to feel. I wanted to watch my belly grow. I wanted to have someone say, "Oh my gosh, she is like your mini you," or she absolutely got that laugh from her dad. I wanted to have those conversations.
Sure.
And I knew having doing adoption, I wasn't going to. I wasn't ready to let go. So when I finally got to the point where I said, okay, let's look into this, I called the Jewish adoption agency, the Christian adoption agency, and then we did the American. And the Jewish and the Christian were very big on the biological mom, biological woman's her rights. So it was important that it was an open adoption so that way they could see their child. I had a hard time with that because I said, well, that's my child. I'm going to raise that child as they're mine. And I don't know what I'm going to be ready to tell them to adopt. It's a conversation for a later day. And they said, no, that's not how we work. So, and Grace just they said, thank you. And we moved on. The American Adoption Agency, and it might be different now, but it was really based on where you live, how much you make, and then the steps to get there. So you needed to create a book. You needed to sell yourself. Your coworkers, friends, and your family had to write stories why you would be good parents, give us examples why. You had to create this foundation of your life for them to be able to read and go through to decide if they want to choose you. And one of the other things was having that room ready at a moment's notice. And I was already struggling going into Babies R Us, going into Bye Bye Baby, going into Target and doing baby showers and sprinkle showers and having to buy diapers, and it would crush me. And I would spend more time in the car crying than I would actually in the store. And the thought of having to create this baby room and having it be empty and walk past it every single day and hear my child's cries and not see my little child wake up from a nap. It was gut wrenching. felt like I could maybe get past that, not the support of my family. But then the kicker was the mom for the state of Missouri has a 3-day, I'm going to say return policy because sometimes you have to have dark humor. So I'm going to say return policy, but they have 3 days to rescind their actions. The mom goes to the book. They say, we want Anna and Jeremy to be our, child's parents, back parents. We go through everything. We pay medical bills, we pay clothing if they need it, we pay apartment if they need it, expenses for everything. If they want special fees. And then when they have the child, they're out of state, we fly, as you mentioned, your friends did. And the whole family knows, and they're all ready. And we fly out there, and that woman has 3 days after seeing her child and holding her child. How would you say no? And I don't know. I've never been in that situation, but wanting a child so badly, I could not imagine saying, oh, yes, here, you can go ahead and have my child. And so then we sit there anxiously for 3 days waiting. And it was something that was hard for me to get past. And we sat with parishioners at my husband's church with his priest at the time. And we talked to a couple who adopted, and they went through it, took them twice with the support financially of their families. They were here too. And what you have to realize is we had already spent $100,000 total so far. So another 60,000 without a guarantee was detrimental to our finances. And they said that it was hard. It was harder than anything else they had done. They were grateful for it. And of course, in the middle of the process, after they said yes, they got pregnant. So they had 2 children. I was like, well, isn't that always how it works?
That always feels. A lot of times we hear about that.
Yes. And I don't know. I didn't like that it was so hard. I felt like we had already been through so much trauma, and our marriage, I felt like I was breaking, and I felt like we were wavering and separating. And I didn't know if that was what we were supposed to do. And so after a long conversation, we had to pause and just reconnect and try to figure us out and rebond again.
Well, and I'm glad that you took that time, because many times when people are going through the infertility journey, they're having losses, they're going through failed IVFs, they're going through all of that. And there's just a tremendous amount of grief that is with that. And many, many times people don't pause to even grieve. They just move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And they don't take that time. And it sounds like that you did take that time to really process some of that. But talk to us a little bit more about that, the grief that you guys were in, how you were both grieving, because I know with what I do as a grief specialist, a grief coach, that I'm sure that you are both grieving very, very differently. So talk to us about that. How was that for you guys?
So that's why I started writing the book, and why I titled the book is the way it is, because it was the silence of the grieving that was the most horrendous. It was the parts that nobody saw. It was after the baby showers, after the bridal showers, after the birthday parties and the holidays with the families, and just normal family events or friend gatherings that I would crash and burn, or my husband would just kind of sit in silence. And it was the silence that started slowly tearing us apart from each other. Not apart as marriage is over and we are fighting with each other, because we never fought with each other. We fought infertility. But it was the silence that started putting that wedge between us, and the communication started breaking down. For me, it was every month trying desperately to give thing they wanted more of life itself as a grandchild, and having every month to tell me no. Having to look at my husband every month when it was no, put a smile on my face and saying, we've got this. We're going to do it next month. Knowing in my heart of hearts, how are we going to get through the darkness? It was every time a friend or family announced their pregnancy, having to focus on my face to make sure I gave them the respect and the happiness that they deserved, because they didn't do anything wrong, and try not to hate them as much as I did. It was extremely hard. I still have moments where I love my life. My life is amazing and magical, but you still have moments of sadness.
So how then did you manage to just pull together through grieving? Did you seek support, help? You said at one point you did talk to the priest about more so adoption, but did you talk to anybody about the silent grief that you were enduring during that time?
No, we did not. We talked to each other.
Yeah.
We processed and we kept lines of communication open. There was a few times where I was just so upset and so sad I didn't have words, and it would be he would just hold me. And we would just lay there in silence and he'd just whisper, "It's okay. And I love you." And every time I would say, "I'm sorry," and every time I would cry that I'm sorry, he'd say, "It's not your fault. This is not your fault. This is infertility wrong." And I would say, "But it is my fault. I'm the reason." And when he would find me on the bathroom floor, crying disastrous mess because yet again, another negative pregnancy test or another failed surgery, he would pick me up and say, "It's going to be okay." He told me,
Take your time.
"Thank you." He would rather be with me and never have children and spend his life with me than marry someone else and have 10. And so for me, I knew that was the start of the light at the end of the tunnel. And so for us, it was important that we had quality time, that we embraced what we did have, and we constantly reassured each other that they were the one and that we loved them. And we did not allow infertility to penetrate our marriage. We were not mad at each other. We were mad and fighting infertility. And that's what kept us arm in arm.
And I love that you say that. I love that you say that way too. You were fighting infertility together, which is super important. That communication is super important. And many times when people are going through that infertility or loss of a child or many of those things, the communication wavers, and that's when problems arise. So communication is key, and it sounds like you guys figured that out. Probably from that first meeting at a stoplight. They love so much that you guys were so open in your communication on all of those things. Tell me what other things you did to help you through that grieving process.
Absolutely. One of the things I did was I journaled quite a bit. It was my outlook and my solitude because I could put pen to paper what I was thinking and how I was feeling without hurting anyone's feelings, without anyone seeing it, and without making myself feel bad for feeling and seeing those. So that was something that really helped me get through a lot of the dark times.
Good. And so I'm going to assume, because we just talked about becoming an author and that's coming up, was that where the book came from? All of those journaling notes, all of those things. And I'm sure there's going to be much more in the book, but this is what I'm going to assume that began with all of that journaling.
So I had no idea that was kind of where this journey was going to take me and that I wanted to write a book. I was really excited to just get everything out on pen and paper, close it, and move on. When we got to the point where I had to have my hysterectomy and we were kind of forging a new path, I started opening up and sharing more about our journey and what we went through. And I did not allow infertility to define me as a woman. And when I opened my mouth and the words came out, there was a lot of women that were going through it. And there was no safe haven. They thought they were alone. They thought they were broken. And all of a sudden it hit me, I need to get our story out. Like, we are what it's all about. Now, granted, our story is very opposite because most people going through infertility and being parents. And the fact that we ended as aunts and uncles and have stayed strong and are happy and are persevering this new life, I wanted our voice to be heard and I wanted to take back my voice. And so I started writing and I didn't stop. And I had moments where I would relive those feelings and those emotions and I would crumble. I'll be honest. I had a moment where I was typing away in my kitchen and I was remembering a situation that's in the book. And I had a moment where I just had to sit on my kitchen floor and ugly cry. And oh boy, did I ugly cry. And, you know, we have a dog, Henry. He's the light of our life, a pug. He came running over. He knew and kind of snuggled with me and just let me cry. And when I was done, I picked myself up and closed the laptop and said, I will check with you tomorrow. I'm going to take some time. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm about 3/4 of the way done. Awesome. We are in conversations with an incredible publishing company that feels our story is amazing and different and needs to be told. And we got clear with the title. which is I'm very excited about. It's called, I'll just read just a smidge, Through the Silence, a true story of infertility, isolation, and unbreakable love.
Yeah.
Gives me goosebumps.
Me too. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
What a beautiful title, The Silence. And talk a little bit, where did that title come from? Because obviously lots of silence, silent grief, just silence all around that. So can you share where that title came from? Or do you want to keep that a secret?
No, I absolutely will share, because hopefully it'll help couples in the throes of infertility, just starting or towards the tail end. It is those silent looks that you give each other from across the room at social functions, at family functions, where you make the other person feel like it's okay. Like, I see you, I get you, and you're going to get through this together. And anytime we would have functions where I had to be happy-go-lucky Anna and the smile on my face, and you knew an announcement was coming, I would get that look or that little squeeze of his hand or my shoulder. And I knew we had that connection through the silence. And it was incredible. And it still is. And we're still like that now, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, that is beautiful. I love that your relationship, I'm going to say it was probably strong before all this, but I feel like it's probably become even stronger just with the communication that needed to happen through all of this. I so love that you are writing a book to put this out there to share, because there's not very many people that share their infertility journey. And if they do share their infertility journey, usually there is children at the end. And with you, there's not. And so it's very unique in that respect that there's was never, I don't want to say there wasn't success in that journey, but there wasn't the success of a family. There were other things that happened through the journey. So I love that you're doing the book and going to share with other people. I can't wait. Do we have any indication as to just put out some time that you think it'll be?
Gosh. I mean,
next year?
I think it's going to be, yes, it will be next year.
Okay.
It will be next year, with us being, so close to the end of the year already and holidays.
Right. Yeah.
I want to make sure that it is correct and it makes sense and it flows. And so I'm throwing all of my thoughts and our memories out there. Jeremy wants to do a chapter or two of the male's perspective and how he felt during it. And, we have some dark humor in there, because what's infertility without a little dark humor? Yeah. Anyone going through it, there are certain steps that men have to take to get us to where we need to be. And sometimes it's in public handicapped bathrooms with someone knocking on the door. So,
yes,
that
is true.
That is true. Figure it out.
That is true. So, yeah. Well, I was going to say maybe a Christmas present this year. Maybe
I will try my hardest.
Valentine's. Well,
yes, Valentine's Day.
You know what? And I'll share this. Infertility month is, I believe, April. So how about we shoot for National Infertility Month next year, April.
It's a good one.
I'm putting it out
I
there.
love that.
April 2026 will be the book launch.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Get ready.
You heard it first here. So let's go to you sharing anything that you would love to share with maybe those women that are struggling. Maybe those women that are right where you were or right where you are now, that they're trying to decide, do we just keep pushing for this family or do we stop? And I'm sure there was some time in there that you were like, okay, I'm done. But what would you share with them?
So, very first thing, but you need to know you are not alone. You are not broken. You did nothing wrong. The enemy is infertility. It is not within your household, and it is not your significant other. And it's not just Jeremy and I that went through infertility. It was his parents. It was my mom. It was our siblings. It was our very close knit friends that we shared with, and a sprinkle of coworkers in between that saw us with the ups and downs, but didn't really know why. And so they walked on eggshells, not knowing what to do. They're also going through it. So you have a support system, because you're not alone in this. 100%, it is okay to say, I'm done. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you don't want to be a mom. I was told once by a friend that if you really want to be a mom, you're going to keep going. And I said, well, I feel 100 and something $1,000, multiple surgeries, 10 years of our life living in the trenches. Fertility is a trench, and you're in it every single day trying to climb your way out. It's okay to get out and see the light. Doesn't make you any less of a woman, and it just changes what the family life looks like. And my husband and I have a great family, and we have amazing nieces and nephews who we love and adore us. And we're there for them. And then we get to come home to our sanctuary and live our best life. So yeah, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think the very first thing you said was super impactful. And I many times say to people with infertility, with grief, is there are people here to support you, and you're definitely not alone. And you very much feel very alone and isolated. But reach out. That's the biggest piece to the loneliness, is not being surrounded many times by people that get it and understand what you're going through.
I will say, because with your podcast being about grief, I very much put death and infertility on the same pathway, because there's no time limit. When you go through either one of those, the world puts a time limit on it.
They do.
And tells you now have to be happy Teresa and happy Anna. But you're allowed to do the emotional roller coaster and feel when you feel and laugh when you laugh.
I appreciate that. So I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, your wisdom, so much wisdom that you've had, and just bringing a light to a topic that's very difficult for people to understand and relate to. So if this is an episode that you know that there's a person in your life that could be struggling with infertility, make sure that you of course, this episode, share it with them. There's nothing I'm sure that you wouldn't like more than to have someone that's going down this journey to hear this episode and get some hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And remember, you first heard it here, a book launch, April of 2026. So till next time, thanks for joining us.